Fabulous Thunderbirds started out as a straight blues band. It pretty much immediately evolved into more rock and roll. And there were guys from Louisiana that we liked to listen to a lot. Guys like Rockin' Sidney and Lonnie Brooks, soul-y kind of stuff, R&B. And as the Thunderbirds evolved, we started writing things in the vein of the stuff that we love. They've always had a hard time classifying the type of music that we do. And all I can tell you is that it's Americana. It's a lot of different American musics put together with the juice of the old stuff. And when I was a kid, before I started the Thunderbirds, I lived in California. You really couldn't play a lot of blues for people if you were a young white kid because they just didn't buy it. And it's payback time. You had to get them dancing first before you could play any kind of blues for them. I mean, there are audiences, of course, who want to hear nothing but straight blues out of me. But I think that the Fabulous Thunderbirds, especially right now, they can do a lot of different things. You know, you can't do anything without having the juice of the old stuff. But you have to have your own voice. You can't be going out there doing it like a cookie cutter, and that's what keeps it fresh. I've got this new lineup. I've known a lot of them since they were kids. It was great because we all got in on the ground floor of the CD, and everybody was very excited, and they were really wanted to show what they could do, but they also wanted to show that what a team they were. It's really the first time I've had guys come together so naturally. If you're in blues circles, you've heard of these guys. Mike Keller on guitar, Johnny Moeller on guitar, Jay Moeller on drums, Randy Bermudez on the bass. They just have that mindset of accompaniment together before they think about themselves individually, which is really rare. I mean, it's a kind of an analytical way to think about it because all they're doing is doing what's right. Back in the old days, if you had a cool old car, let's say like a Studebaker or something, or a Chevy, you would always have a couple of cars in the yard that didn't run that you would use for parts. And that's kind of like what songs are. You might have a song that has a lot of cool things in it, but it's just not working out for you. And you can transplant those cool things into another song maybe that really has a lot of potential. I was a middle-class kid. My dad worked for GM for 40 years. My folks struggled, but we ate. When I left the house and I chose to do this, that's when it was difficult to figure out your next meal. I had a great time, don't get me wrong, but I was living in some pretty squalid situations. But I don't know a musician that hasn't been through that. You can really connect to people's problems everywhere. We got third world countries right here in the United States. If you live in Detroit, you know. If you live in New Orleans, you know. But it's not all about all this miserable stuff that we all go through. It's about turning it around. I had this new song. It's called Do You Know Who I Am? I'm not a guy who writes political songs. I like people that just have a good time and dance. But I was doing interviews and people were going, geez, you know, all the stuff you're saying in your interviews, you should write something about it. I like what you're saying. In the case of the record business, you know, maybe it goes out to hundreds of thousands of people all of a sudden, all at once. In the case of this particular song, I'm going to give it to people. I want people to hear it. I don't want them to have to buy something like this. Don't get me wrong, I like money just as much as the other guy, okay? And I got to keep a roof over my family's head too. But this is a type of thing where that's not the agenda. It's a pro-people song. In this case, it was about kind of current events and the kind of apathy maybe that we don't need to be having anymore. You know, be thinking about everybody. I don't think anybody wants your money, but they would like you to wish them well. And I think if you're that way, it's going to come back to you.
I was watching the news the other evening. There was an old man on the street taking a hell of a beating. He cried, Lord, have mercy, please somebody save me. But no bystander that day got a medal for bravery. As I watched those kids beat him to the ground, no one even bothered to turn around. The next thing I saw struck me kind of funny. There was a famous actress trying to get me to donate my money. You see, feeding the children of the world is a noble idea. But what about the starving children we got right here? There's a whole lot of kids in poverty in Detroit City and New Orleans. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? I'm the next door neighbor. I'm a natural man. I got a right to be free. A roof over my head. Who's running this country? Do you know who I am? You know, I lived next door to my neighbor for 15 years. He come knocking on my door, his eyes full of tears. He said, I lost my job on the GM assembly line, and I've just come over here to say goodbye.